Right, good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Samach Vav, Seches Eruvin. However, we left off yesterday on the end of, or not the end, the top of Samach Hey Amud Beis on the top. So we were one Amud behind from catching up from all the Yontifs, from the Chagim. And now we are continuing. So we are in the fourth line, first word, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav. So it says Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav Yisrael, the Nachri, B'Pnimis, V'Yisrael B'Chitzona. All right, now we're gonna see a couple cases, scenarios of dealing with this case. So let's understand the case first, and then because we'll be discussing this multiple times. So there's an inner chutzner and an outer chutzner. Now, what does that mean? There's basically, in order to go get through the inside chutzner, right, you have to walk through the outer chutzner, right? It's basically blocking, it's behind it. So therefore, the people who are the inner chutzner, the pnimis, have a right of way through the outer chutzner. Their house might not be attached to that outer chutzner, but they have a right of way. Okay, so therefore, is potentially they could block an eruv because since they have a right of way through the outer chutzner, right? So therefore, they really should need to join with the eruv. If they don't join with the eruv, then it could block the two of them. Okay. However, the inner chutzner, the people on the outside have no rights inside the inner chutzner. Okay, so that's something to understand for the Metzias. Now, so Yisrael v'Nachri b'Pnimis. So now, you have a Yisrael and Nachri, so a Jew and a non-Jew in the inner one, and the Yisrael b'Chitzayna. And you have a one person who lives in the outer chutzner, just one house, into the chutzner, just the Jew lives alone. So now the shaila is, we discussed as a machlokes in our Mishnah, right? To go back to the machlokes in our Mishnah, go ahead and find the Mishnah. Where was it? It was on the top. I think it was the first Mishnah of this parak, if I recall correctly. Samach Aleph, maybe? Or Samach Aleph, let me see. Yeah. So right. So we had a machlokes over there in the beginning. It was a Tanakama who we identified as our mayor, and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. In terms of if you have a guy that lives one-on-one with a Jew, okay? So one says, God is the one-on-one Jew. The guy asks, the akum asers, unless he is mevatel, right, or rents out his rights to the chutzner, he blocks the other person. Okay, so therefore, we do it because it's a gzera. We don't. He blocks it. The other opinion holds that one-on-one there is no gzera there. Why? Because Jews never share one-on-one a chutzner with an akum. Right? It's too dangerous. They'll kill them, and therefore no one will ever do it. So therefore, there's no need to make a gzera in that case. If for whatever reason it happens as one-on-one, well then it's mutter because there was never a gzeira in that case because it was lo shchiach. All right, so that was machlokes. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says it's mutter one-on-one, and Rav Meir says aser one-on-one. Okay, that's to remember. Now let's get into today's. Right now, Yisrael v'Nachi b'Pnimis v'Yisrael b'Chitzona. So ba ma'aseh l'fnei Rabbi Vaser. So the question is in the outer, in the outer chutzner. Okay. So does the one guy lives in the outer chutzner, and the guy also has the rights to walk through. So he asers it. So Bamas the Rabbi Aser, and he says aser because since the akum, right? Therefore, since the akum has rights into it, so therefore it's one-on-one, and therefore it's aser. And Rabbi also paskin and says aser. So now they want to understand why did they rule it was aser by Rabbi and Rabbi Chia. So Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Shili Perkin, the Rabbi Sheshes. They're sitting in the end of the studies of Rabbi Sheshes. Yosef, Rabbi Sheshes, the Kamar. Kaman Amar Rav Lishmaitza. So who did Rav say this like? Right? Rav was the one who reported this, right? Rav Yudam Rav. So Rav said this. So who was the one that Rav said like? So Rav Meir, it must be like Rav Meir who says one-on-one, right? As we just saw the machlokes in our Mishnah, one-on-one is still aser. And Karkesh Rei Rabba Reisha. And Rabba said, yeah. So Rav Shesha said that was the reason. And Rabba said that was the reason. And said that was the reason why it was aser, because it must be like Rav Meir. So Gemara says, Amar Rav Yosef. So it says Rav Yosef, Trey Gavri, Ravri, Karabanan, right? Two great rabbis such as Rav Sheshes and Rav, right? And Rabba, right? And Rabba, right? So Trey Gavri, Ravri, Karabanan, Litu, Bahai Milsa. Can they both be mistaken in this matter, right? I understand. If the whole thing is to teach us, right? that one-on-one is usher. So why do you have to have this scenario of an inner one, an outer one? Just talk about a chatzir, one Jew, one non-Jew, and say it's usher. And you say, oh, no, that was the Maisa Shahaya, and that's what happened. They asked also the question from Rav, is it what about the inner one? The inner one, there's only two people there, him and the Akum, and the only two people have rights there, him and the Akum. And they said over there, it's mutter. So one-on-one, obviously, is mutter. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. So Ella, my Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. Rather, what do you say, Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov? If that's the case, if it's Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, then why in the case of the Chitzona did the one guy answer it? So Ella, Rabbi Kiva, maybe you say like Rabbi Kiva, which is an opinion we'll see later on. Right? There's going to be a machlokes as to when someone has rights into a land, as I mentioned before. Do the rights, is that basically make that person like he's living there or not, or maybe it's somewhere in between? So maybe it's like Rabbi Kiva, Da'amar, Regel Hamuteres, right? Regel Hamuteres means he has a right of way, right? He has a right of way. Regel Hamuteres Mekayma, Aseres Shalabim Kayma. That a person who has, right, a right of way, right, he's muteres mekayma, right? He makes it mutter, right, to carry in his own area, right? But in the area that's not his, right, he answers. So if that knows, he can answer the person from the inside, the inner Jew, right, would answer the outer Jew. So why is it just the guy answers the other one? It should be even the Jew, right? If you hold it, since the inner Jew, right? When I say inner Jew, I mean the Jew in the Pnimi, right? The Jew with the inner Chatzir. If he's from that one, he should answer. Why do you have to talk about the case of the Nachri? Some Rav Huna, really, Rabbi Kiva. Literally, it's like we suggested, like Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, and like who holds that one-on-one is mutter, right? Rabbi Kiva. We also hold like Rabbi Kiva that even the rights of one, the rights of someone who doesn't live there, but he goes through asert. We're talking about a case where the person on the Pnimi, the Jew, made an Eruv with the Chitzayna. So he had an Eruv to go there, and the only one who was not joined or leased or did anything was the Akum. The only reason is because the Nachri, that's why it's Aser. Like a Nachri lo Aser. But if there was no Nachri there, then he wouldn't have Asered, because it would just be one Jew and he made the Eruv, and therefore it would have been okay. So therefore that was the case of there when there was an Eruv between the Pnimi Yisrael and the Chitzona Yisrael. However, there was no passage, or there was no nothing done with the Goy, and that was the reason why the Goy answered that makom there. Fine. Next case. Boy Minei Rabbi Eliezer Meirav. Yisrael v'Nachri b'Chitzayna v'Yisrael b'Pnimis Ma'u. What about a case similar, but Yisrael in the outer Chatzir was shared by Yisrael and a Nachri, and the inner one was just one Jew. So the Pnimi had the right of way through the outer Chatzir. And what's halacha there? So Hasan Tamish in the Shech Dedai Demir Tach Nachri. So we say over there, maybe in the case of the Sever Hashta Asi Yisrael v'Amerli, right? So now the question is like this: is this considered to be a case of where it's going to be a common? So over there, in the case of it's common for a person, right? When you have the living an inner one, so therefore they always pass, right? So if the guy, the Akum, would murder, right, the Jew, right, the outer Jew would know about it, because obviously he's coming in, he sees two people go in and one person go out. So obviously he knows that this guy did something. So the guy's not going to do anything. So therefore that's more of a common practice. If it's common, therefore there's a gzera. So Hasim Tam the Dyer Demir Tach Nachri over there, he's nervous. And I'll say, Yisrael, the Havi Gabe Checha, where's the Jew that was with you? Obviously, he's gonna know I murdered him. So therefore, they're not going to murder. Since they're not going to murder, therefore, it's not uncommon. It would be common for a Jew to share a Chatzir with an Akum, and therefore it would be Aser. But over here in this case, maybe we could say like this: if there's only one Jew in the inner one, and the Jew shares with the guy in the outer one, so then the Jew in the inner one can say, "Hey, where's the Jew that's normally shares a chatzir with you?" He can say, "Oh, he went out to the world the other direction," right? So therefore, it's basically something that's not common, because people would be scared about getting murdered. Or maybe he's going to be nervous to do anything, and they say, "Hey, the Jew is going to go ahead. The Jew in the Pnimi will see me do something to the Jew, and therefore he's not going to do anything. And if he's not going to do anything, therefore it's common practice. If it's common practice, then people, since common practice, then the Rabbanan will go there and say, hey, then he will aser. So she says, give wisdom to a smart person, and he'll get smarter, right? So now in this case, that just like the guy asers in the case of the primi, so too he asers in the chitzar. Fine. Next ma'aseh. Reish Lakish, the Talmidim of Rabbi Chanina, ikla lahu pundak. One time, Reish Lakish and the Talmidim of Rabbi Chanina, they went to a certain pundak, a certain motel. V'loi havi seicher v'havi masker. So the other person who shared there, I guess there was also a seicher renting the space, but there was not he wasn't around. The tenant, somebody else who was renting one of the rooms was not there, but the owner was there. So Amru Mahu Limiga Mine, can we go ahead and basically lease the rights, right? There's a chutzner there. Can we lease the rights, right, from the owner, even though he rented out the room to a guy? So Kohechadoloi Matzi Misalik Le Loiti Boy Lechadoloi Agrino. So if you have a case, sorry about a little yelling behind in the background. So you say, if in a case, in other words, he can't throw him out. In other words, that the guy has a lease. In other words, he already paid, and therefore the owner of the inn, right, the owner of the motel has no rights to the rooms. Obviously, he can't go ahead and lease on his behalf the rights in order to restrict his rights. He's only asking a question of where he does have the potential rights to basically evict him or throw him out. Can he go ahead and basically lease out those rights, right, and get paid for it for the guy in order for the Jews to be able to carry? So the matzi agrina odilma hashtami alo salkes. Do we say since he has the potential to do it, therefore to throw him out, therefore he can go ahead and lease on behalf of him, or do we say that since lamaisa he didn't lease it, therefore it doesn't work? So Reish Lakish niskor. Let's go ahead and lease it from the owner. Then we get back to the south, we get back to the yeshiva, then we'll go ahead and ask you if we did right. So they did it. And also, Rabbi Afas, they asked Rabbi Afas, right? It was good that you guys rented it, it was mutter that what you did. And Rabbi Chanina, Bar Yosef, Rabbi Chia, Bar Abba, Rabbi Asi, Ikloy Lahu Pundak. So one time, Rabbi Chanina, Bar Yosef, Rabbi Chia, Bar Abba, and Rabbi Asi, they were also in a certain hotel. The Asr Nachi married the Pundak b'Shabbos, and then he came on Shabbos, right? The landlord or the owner came on Shabbos. So up until then it was okay. Now all of a sudden he came on Shabbos. So Amru Mahu L'Meger Minei. Can we go ahead and on Shabbos? Can we go ahead and lease it from him on Shabbos? So Seichik Kamar Dami. Do we say that renting or leasing, right, from a guy? Now remember, when Jews do an eruv, right, they do an eruv. They put food together, and therefore they're mishtatif all together, and therefore it's like everyone's makom, right? When it comes to a guy, that's not the same. That's not how it works, right? What it works is they rent out their rights. They say, hey, I have a right to walk into this chutzner. I'm selling you my rights to the chutzner for this, for over Shabbos. So the question is, just like when we make an eruv, you can only make an eruv before Shabbos. You can't make an eruv on Shabbos. So too, when you lease out with an akum, also it has to be done on Friday before Shabbos. Or do we say that there are certain times where a Jew can go ahead and be mavatal as rishus? He says, you know what? I relinquish my rights from this chatzir, and you guys can do it. And a person's allowed to go ahead and relinquish his rights, but on Shabbos. But so too, you can a guy can go ahead and basically sell his rights on Shabbos. So we're at the bottom of Samach Hey Amud Beis, 3 lines from the bottom. So he says, and so Rabbi Chanina bar 4 lines. Rabbi Chanina bar Yosef Amar Niskar, the Rabbi Asi Amar Lo Niskar. Right. So Rabbi Chanina says you can do it on Shabbos. Rabbi Asi says Lo Niskar, you can't do it on Shabbos. Amar Lu Rabbi Chia bar Abba Nismoch Al Divrei Zakei v'Niskar. Let's go ahead and rely on Rabbi Chanina bar Yosef, and you can go ahead and lease it on Shabbos. And also Shalei Rabbi Yechon, they asked Rabbi Yechon, Samarlan, he told them, Yofe Asisem Sheskartam. It was good that you guys leased it. It was mutter to do. It was mutter to do it on Shabbos. So, however, this does not seem to be a universal shita opposed to everybody. So, Tahuba Nahardia. So, those in Nahardia, they were wondering. That renting is just like making an eruv. And what does that mean? My lav does not mean just like you can only make an eruv on Friday before Shabbos. So you can go ahead and also only rent from the guy before Shabbos, but not during Shabbos. So didn't Rabbi Yochanan argue with this? So and was it Rabbi Yochanan? 1 second. No. Yeah. All right. So right, Rabbi Yochanan was the one who said you guys did good by doing it on Shabbos. So did Rabbi Yochanan say this? Didn't he say that you can only do before Shabbos, just like an Erev? So he said, no, that which we compare the schirus to Erevin, right? In other words, the renting out, for the leasing from the guy, and to making an Erev for the Jews to make an Erev. The comparisons with the two is not to do with on Shabbos or before Shabbos. 3 other cases they're similar. What case is that? Number 1, you're allowed to go ahead and make an Erev with something worth less than a pruta. So too, you can go ahead and lease from a guy less than a pruta. Right? That's 1. Just say when you make an Erev, you can say basically someone who hired help who works in the house and says, hey, I can make an Erev on behalf of my owner. So too, a person who's basically hired help by a guy, he can also go ahead and lease the rights of that property because he's living there, right? He's an employee there or one of the workers there. He's allowed to do it. That's number 2. And just like when an Erev, let's say 5 people share a chatzir, and one of them can make an Erev with an adjoining chatzir on behalf of the other 5. So too, when you do with 5 people, that all 5 of them, right, are part of a chutzir, one of them can go ahead and lease out to another chutzir. So you see, those are the comparisons, but nothing to do with on Shabbos or before Shabbos. So Tahai by Rabbi Elazar. Elazar, he also looked into the matter. He was confused. So Rabbi Zera, Rabbi Elazar, why are you confused? What is bothering you? So Rav Sheshes Gava Rabbi Zera Lo Yodi Mat Rabbi Elazar. What a great Rav such as Rabbi Zera. You don't know what the difficulty is, right? Now I was saying this, right? Kokashle the Shmuel Rabbi, right? Because it appears that the Rabbi Yochanan is in contradiction with Shmuel, his Rebbe, right? So that's if you say now, according to this, is that according to Rabbi Yochanan, you can go ahead and lease it on Shabbos. So this opinion of Rabbi Yochanan appears to disagree with his Rebbe Shmuel. And what did Shmuel say? Domar Shmuel. Now there's going to be 2 categories. First one's like this: Kol makom she'oisrin u'marvin. Any time, right, where you have the Messias is right, where you have the situation is that she'oisrin u'marvin, right, that the people aster one another. In other words, that if I have rights to a chatzir and I didn't join in, then I aser the rishus, to everyone else, right? I ruined the party, right? So that's called oisrin. And I have the ability to make an eruv, right? I have the ability to make an eruv. So if both those things apply, then mevatlin. Then if I have the ability to aser and the ability to make an eruv, and then a Shabbos starts, I can go ahead and be mevatel my rishus. I can say, you know what? I'm out. I relinquish my rights to this chatzir. You guys can use it, and therefore they can go ahead and carry in the chutzir, but he's not allowed to go ahead and carry in the chutzir or bring from his house there. So that case, he is mevatlin. However, the other 2 cases, ma'arvin, if a person can make an eruv ein oisrin, he can join them in the eruv, but his joining or not joining the eruv, right, is not mevatel, does not ruin the party, does not aser the others. Or a case of where oisrin, he asers others if he doesn't join in. Vein Marvin, but he doesn't have the opportunity to be ma'ariv, right? We'll soon explain these cases. Ein mevatla, right? In those situations, a person cannot relinquish his rights. So the only time you can be mevatel your rights and relinquish your rights is if you aser, if you didn't join in, and you have the ability to make it erev. But if it's only one or the other, then you can't be mevatel your rights. Now we're going to explain this case. What does this mean? Kol makom sha'isrin v'arim mevatlit, any day where you're aser, or if you don't go join in, or you can be ma'ariv, it's mevatel, then you can't be mevatel your shus. What case is that? Right? The case of where we discussed earlier, right? When you have a chatzir one inside the other, that the inner people need the outer one, right? And therefore, so since the inside people need the outer one, so therefore they can aser if they don't join in, and they can also make an eruv says, okay, we'll be ma'ariv ma'ariv in your outer chutzner, and therefore they can go ahead and carry it. So that's that case. But what about case number 2? When you can make an eruv, you can join the eruv, but you don't answer if you don't join the eruv. What's that case? Maybe you have 2 chatzeros side by side, right? And there's a door in between. Now, you can make an eruv. You make an eruv, and therefore they can carry from one chatzer to the other. But if they don't make an eruv on the side by side, they don't ask for the other ones. Why? Because they naturally they don't have rights into it. So if they don't have rights into it, so therefore they're not going to ask. They're not going to ruin the party of Chatzar A if the people of Chatzar B don't join. But if they want to join, they could join. So such a case, right? There is no batala. They can't be mevatel their rights there. And the third case number 3, is Oisrin. When they aster it, vein marvin, they can't join in. Ein mevatel. What's that case? Isn't that not talking about a case of a nachri, right? Let's say a guy, right, who comes in and he comes there on Shabbos, right? Now, so he comes on Shabbos, and therefore talking about a case of he asks if he doesn't join him, but he can't make an eruv, right? Going to make an eruv. Now, if he comes the day before on Friday, so you say, okay, he can't join an eruv, but loiger me'esmal, let him go ahead and make a lease yesterday, right? So he can make a lease yesterday. Obviously, that could be the case because since he's the ability to make a lease, right? So that would be okay. So Ella lav da'asav Shabbos, right? Top of Amud Beis. Rather not. He comes on Shabbos. The Ketani, and it says that they're Eisrin ve'ein marvin ein mevatlin. And so I'm on a case where they can't be ma'ariv. So you see over here that Shema Mina, if you come on Shabbos, according to Shmuel, you're not allowed to go ahead and lease the rights, right? Only if you came before Shabbos, you can do it. But on Shabbos, you couldn't do it. So you see, according to Shmuel, he holds you can't do it on Shabbos. And Rabbi Yechon was the one who praised him for doing it on Shabbos. So you see, clearly that was the problem with Rabbi Yechon's Shita, was that it appeared to contradict that which Shmuel said. And Amar Rav Yosef, says Rav Yosef, Lo Shmiya li hashmaitza. He says, no, I never heard this. So Amar le Abaye, at Martin Ilon. You never heard this. You're the one who told us. He told it on this case. Shmuel ain't bittul rishus mechatzer the chatzer. All right, now we're going to assume this. There is no bittul rishus, right? You can't go ahead and give up your right from one chatzer to the other, right? You can only be mevatel rishus if you're a bias part of a chatzer. But when it comes to chatzer to another chatzer, according to Shmuel, ain't bittul. They ain't bittul rishus bechurva, and you could also not be mevatel your rishus to a churva. Right, let's say 2 houses attached to a churva. A churva is basically a demolished area, right? Ruins, stuff that's not really commonly used. So if 2 people's houses attached to it, so one cannot be mevatel his reshus to it, right? It's not a common occurrence. And by Eruvin, we only basically make takanas and gzeras when it comes to common occurrences. So they bittul reshus mechurba. And you told us this, that which Shmuel says no bittul rishus from chatzer. He only said when it's 2 chatzeros side by side, and there's an entrance and there's a connection between the 2 of them. That's the case where they cannot be mevatel their rights. But it's one within the other. In other words, the people on the inside one need to have the rights of the outer one. Since each one, right, if they don't join in the Eruv, they can answer the people in the outer one because they have the rights to it. So therefore, since they answer it, therefore they have the ability to be mevatel it. And Amar Le, Ana, so I guess defending himself, Rav Yosef, Amar Le, Ana, so Ana, so I mean Mishmei the Shmuel Hachi. No, that which I said Shmuel said wasn't on this, it was on something else. Shmuel. Ein lana be'eruvin ela b'lashon k'mishasenu. Right? The only thing we know about Eruvin, right? Obviously, it doesn't come from Sukkim. It's all takanas. Is you have to go strictly by the lashon mishnasenu, by the strict guidelines and the words of our Mishnayos. And it says anshe chatzer v'lo anshe chatzeros. When we talk about people being mevatel their rishus, it says anshe chatzer. The people of a chatzer can be mevatel their rishus, but it doesn't say people of chatzeros. So therefore, if you're part of one chatzer and you have the rights in another chatzer, you can't be mevatel your rishus from the other chatzer, right? Because you can only be mevatel your rishus, your rights from the chatzer you're in. So because it's anshe chatzer v'lo anshe chatzeros. Some are late. No. That also, he didn't apply the rule of Ein Lanu Be'eruvin Ela Koloshim Shasenu on that rule. He says, no, Ki Amart Lanu Be'eruvin Ela Koloshim Shasenu is only going on which case? Aha, on this. Amart Lan, Shamavi Lechatzeres Kechatz Lebatim. That a Mavu is to Chatzeros, like a Chatzer is to Batim. That just like a Mavu has to have Chatzeros, multiple Chatzeros attached. So to a Chatzer, we're talking about a Chatzer, has multiple houses to it, and therefore it's not a stira to say that a person is mevatel rishus from one chatzir to another chatzir. That would be permissible. So once again, if you have one chatzir, outer one and inner one, the people on the inner one, since they need the outer one and they didn't join the eruv, they can be mevatel the rishus even on Shabbos to allow the people of the outer chatzir to go ahead and carry in there. So gufa, Omar Shmuel. Ein bittul rishus mechatzer lechatzer ve'ein bittul rishus bechurba. We just said earlier that according to Shmuel, right, you can't be mevatel from one chatzer to the other, and bittul rishus to a from your house to a churva, right? And remember that which we said was only talking about a case side by side, not in and out, because in and out even Shmuel would agree that you can mevatel. Rabbi Yochanan Omar yesh bittul rishus mechatzer lechatzer ve'yesh bittul rishus bechurba. And Rabbi Yochanan says no, there is bittul rishus from one chatzah to the other. There's also bittul rishus bechurva with sricha, and you have to tell us that that they also argue here as in addition to what we said earlier. Right? If we only would have thought that we learn the case of chatzir mechatzer that they can't go ahead and be mevatel rishus from chatzir to chatzir, but how come Shmuel mishum b'hai tashmis l'chud b'hai tashmis l'chud? Maybe mevatel rishus to chatzir was because each one had their own chatz and they don't really need the other one, and therefore they can't be mevatel rishus. Aval b'churva. But if it was the case of a churva, right, the tashmishas the travayu, the churva, since only each one shares the usage of that place, and what did Rabbi Yochanan? Maybe I can agree with Rabbi Yochanan that one of them, since it's one makom, and each one basically has the equal rights in that one spot, right? So therefore, maybe he would agree with Rabbi Yochanan that either one can go ahead and be mevatel rishus. But he doesn't say that. He sticks to his guns. He says, no, you can't be mevatel rishus in the case of a churva. And also, if you have the second case, maybe Rabbi Yochanan said in the case of a churva that he can go ahead, since there's one makom, each of them can go ahead and be mevatel rishus. But when each one has its own chatzir, maybe you would agree with Shmuel that one cannot be mevatel his rights to the other one, and therefore it's tzricha. Therefore, we need to say the machlokes is in both cases from a chatzir to chatzir and from houses to a churva. And Amar Abaye says Abaye, Hodam Shmuel ein biltul rishus mechatzir chatzir lo Amar el b'shtei chatzeres pasach habayran. We said that which we quoted, which we said earlier. That which Shmuel says you can't be mevatel rishus to rishus. That's only when it's two chatzeros side by side. Aval shtei chatzeros zolifim zu mitoich sh'ais mevatlen. And when you have two chatzeros, one side the other, then we say that the person on the inner one can go ahead and be mevatel rishus the outer one to permit the people on the outer one. However, Rav Omar afilu shtei chatzeros zolifim zo pamim vatlim. Even if you have one inside the other, you can't always be mevatel rishus. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Ketzad, how so? So it depends where the eruv goes. Nasno eruv b'chitzayna. If they went ahead and put the eruv of the people of the inner one and the outer chatzir, they put the eruv in the chitzayna, and somebody forgot to join in the eruv, whether it's some of the inner chatzir or the outer chatzir. Both of them are usur. You can't go ahead. No one can go ahead and be mevatel rishus. Shtei asuros. However, if the placement of the location, we're going to explain this brisa now. However, if they place the eruv in the inner one, and someone in the inner one didn't go ahead and join it, no one can be mevatel rishus. First of all, the people in the chitzon don't have real rights in the inner one, and the people in the inner one, since someone did not join the eruv, you can't be mevatel rishus there. However, if someone in the outer one forgot and did not join in the eruv, which was placed in the inner one, pnimis materas, then the inner one he's allowed to go ahead and be mevatel his rights. V'chitzon asur, and one of the outer ones they still cannot go ahead and be mevatel rishus. Now we're going to explain these cases. We'll just do the first one, and then we'll stop here for today. Nasno eruvin b'chitzayna. If they went ahead and they placed the eruv in the outer one, all right, this is the first case we have. The shachach echad beina pnimis beina b'chitzayna, and then someone on the either in the inner one or the outer one, they forgot, we were not ma'arev. Shtei asuros. Nobody's able to go ahead and be mevatel. So they analyze the case. If someone's from the inner one, so who should they go ahead and be mevatel the rights? Mevatel of bnei pnimis, right? If they're mevatel the rishus to the ones and the people on the inside, relinquish on the inside, well, the Erev wasn't there. The Erev was in the outer one. And levatel of bnei chitzon, if you go ahead and relinquish his rights from the inside guy to the outer one, ein bitter rishus mechatzer the chatzer, right? Then we say, well, the inner one to the outer one, there is no bitter. That's the case according to Rabbi, where there's no, you can't be mevatel your rishus from chatzer to chatzer. Now, we'll stop. The next one goes on to the next case. We'll stop here. So, all right, we'll stop here. Tomorrow we'll pick up from here. We'll say we're holding, and tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem, we will continue. And we have basically officially caught up. And tomorrow we'll continue from here. And once again, wish Mazel Tov to Meir and to the big brother Yosef.
Shkaya.
And the baby girl. Are you naming tomorrow?
Mazel Tov.
On Shabbos?
Either tomorrow or Shabbos. If it's tomorrow, we'll do it in Kins. And Mazel Tov to the uncle, the fet there, Uncle Gummy, and Yosef.
I said.